What the city is talking about.
The news that impacts you.
Welcome to the Montreal Now podcast
with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Welcome to another edition of The Week That Was here on the iHeartRadio Network. I'm Aaron Rand along with Natasha Hall, and this week we'll take a look at these stories. For workers who've been called back to the office after working from home because of COVID, the transition is causing its own unique set of problems. We'll talk to someone about what those challenges are and how they're being met.
Peanut allergies are no joke, but a new skin patch is proving very effective in helping children develop a tolerance to peanuts. This could be a life changer. We spoke to the study's lead author to find out how it works. And just when you think we're close to putting COVID behind us, the latest strain has symptoms that are very much like allergies. And what about booster shots? Should we still be getting them? What do you need to know, and how can you tell if it's just allergies or COVID? We spoke to a cardiologist and epidemiologist, Dr. CHRIS LABOS.
But we begin with this story. With the proliferation of sports betting sites and the TV commercials promoting them, it's virtually impossible to get away from them. And because of that, there are now growing calls for regulation to prevent young people from getting hooked on gambling. We'll find out more from someone who's been studying the problem. There's been a lot of talk of late, and it's interesting because when this first started, I think people thought, oh, this is going to be interesting, it'd be kind of fun. We're kind of catching up to the U.S., right? Sports betting allowed in Canada, at least in some parts anyway. And then the next thing you know, you can't turn on a sporting event in this country. You turn on a hockey game. These ads seem to run literally every single break. And not only that, but then during the game, the boards where they can now put messages on are pushing the same thing. Sports betting, available to everyone to do, easy enough to do from your phone. And that obviously has now gotten a lot of people very concerned because there are too many kids. And it's interesting, Natasha, your daughter's only 11. This is not aimed at her.
No.
But some of these ads are so colorful and so kind of exciting looking that she's into this now.
She's been asking me so many questions about it. And I'm thinking that is highly problematic, that it's grabbed her attention, that she's curious. And it makes me a little worried about where we're headed from here.
They're everywhere. You can't get away from them. That in itself is a problem. Our guest, Peter Donnelly, is Professor Emeritus of Sport Policy and Politics at the University of Toronto and a member of the campaign to ban ads for gambling. Mr. Donnelly, thanks for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.
People who are in this business to get, those of us to sort of spend our money on betting on sports, I guess have been petitioning for quite a long time to basically have a level playing field here because they've been doing this in the U.S. for quite a while. Was this out of control from the get-go, or has it gotten worse over time?
I think the legislation was put in without sufficient thought to regulation. It was an attempt to prevent so much Canadian money going to offshore betting sites, which it was, and to bring it within the Canadian government control and regulation. But while governments are getting a piece of this, they haven't thought through the process of how to prevent the advertising being aimed at children or people who have already found that they are gambling addicted.
So I guess my next question would be, is there a way for this to work by aiming it specifically at the right people as opposed to just basically throwing this against the wall and you don't care whose money you're going to take, you just want to make money if you're in this business? How do we modify without getting rid of it altogether? Can that be done?
I think so, yeah. I think that there are ways to do this. In other countries, they have what's called whistle-to-whistle bans, so there is no mention of gambling during the actual game that's being broadcast live. Other places have determined that before a certain time at night, there should be no betting advertising. I think we have to think of this in the same way that we regulate alcohol advertising and particularly tobacco and cannabis advertising.
Right. You would never be allowed to have a beer ad you can't have cigarette ads on TV anyway, but you would never be allowed to have an alcohol ad, let's say, that was animated and colorful and sort of visually appealing to kids. And that's what I find so disturbing about this now. And it wasn't always like that. There was a shift. The gambling ads used to be fewer and far between, but they were also sort of they were sexy. Do you know what I mean? They were very adult oriented. And then there has been a distinct shift where they became colorful and animated. You would never be allowed to do that with beer. So why is it being tolerated with gambling?
Well, clearly it's not being tolerated by you or me. It's not being regulated yet, but I suspect that regulation will be coming because I hear that a lot of MPs, MLAs, MPPs across Canada are hearing a lot from their constituents about this, and so I think the regulation will be coming. It would be sooner, better than later, but I think it does need to happen.
I wonder, though, if we were talking in the U.S., we'd be talking about lobby groups because this represents literally millions, maybe billions of dollars in terms of an industry. Is there pushback here from what you know from the industry?
I think there is all kinds of pushback behind the scenes, but they have inserted themselves into this process in a really interesting way by partnering with professional leagues, by partnering with media corporations, and by making a lot of money for both professional leagues and media corporations. And in that way, I think that we need to be really concerned about all kinds of things, from conflicts of interest to whatever in terms of the actual health and addiction risks from this.
So let's delve into that a little bit. So the idea here being that if kids, the earlier that people get involved in gambling, the higher the chances are that it's going to be addictive for them. Is that correct?
I don't know that data, but the data are that if you get them early, then you're going to have more people interested in gambling, and a certain percentage of those, right. And I've heard figures up to 3%, maybe more than that, of those people who are gambling are at risk.
Okay, and the idea here being that they're targeting young people, or at least it seems that way. So they're
targeting the next generation of bettors.
Which is crazy,
just like the tobacco companies did.
Yeah, setting them.
But is there no sort of gate here where if you're a 10-year-old or 12-year-old looking at this, thinking this looks kind of like fun, where are the safeguards built into the system to keep you from being able to get on there and spend money or do that? Are they there?
If you can find somebody who can, who is irresponsible enough and old enough to have an account, who will bet for you, I think the door is open already.
I mean, it's like booze and cigarettes, right? If you want it, you can always find access one way or another. Let's talk about this campaign that's started now to try and have these gambling ads banned entirely. So not just regulated, not just controlled, but totally and completely banned. And we've got Rafi on board. I think there's Clara Hughes, right? And PK Subban's dad, Carl Subban, all speaking out about this. Do you think that's an actual possibility that it could go so far as to have these ads banned completely?
Well, you call for the best possible, and then perhaps it gets negotiated in a way. But certainly, the ideal would be a ban. There's no tobacco advertising. There's no cannabis advertising on mainstream media for very good reasons. And we think there are very good reasons for not having gambling advertising as well.
We are going to run out of time here. I'm just curious. You talk about, Natasha mentioned some people, celebrities behind the push to ban it. Anecdotally, when you talk to people, what are people saying to you? Are there plenty of people out there who think, no, this is fine. I can control this. I only bet a little here, a little bit there. Are there as many of them as one might think?
I haven't heard any of that. I mean, the people who were gambling before now have a more easy access to it than to more reliable services than when they were betting all offshore with fly-by-night firms in the Philippines and other places. But now it's more. It's much more regulated and controlled for the actual process, but not in terms of who its target audiences are.
I wonder also if they shouldn't be allowed to have, kids' idols advertising for them, like promoting them.
I'm not sure Wayne Gretzky is a kid's idol anymore.
No, but Connor McDavid.
Certainly, Austin Matthews is a kid's idol.
Yeah, it's highly problematic.
Well, look, you mentioned government is paying attention to this, so maybe we will start to see something begin to change here. Enough people get on the bandwagon. I think a lot of us are concerned with it. So, Mr. Donnelly, Professor, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Professor Peter Donnelly over at the University of Toronto. You're concerned for a 10 and 11-year-old. Imagine, kids a little bit older, 14, 15, 16, who do this because it's on their phone. And just, spending that money, and then how long till that comes back and bites you in the backside?
I think people think, whatever, it's harmless. Yeah. It's harmless for some people. It's harmless for some people who don't have that addictive personality. But if you do this, it's far from harmless.
Informative.
Interactive.
And always interesting.
This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
For workers who've been called back to the office after working from home because of COVID, the transition is causing its own unique set of problems. We'll talk to someone about what those challenges are and how they're being met. All right, I mentioned Elon Musk. I want you to, so just for context, he's doing an interview and is asked about this idea that he would like to see, and he said this in the past, he wants people to come back to work, be it at Tesla, be it at Twitter. He does not like the idea of people working from home, as in it's kind of a special category. So he's asked about it. Listen to what he said. This is yesterday.
Look, I'm a big believer that people are more productive when they're in person. And the whole sort of work from home thing, it's like, look, there are some exceptions, but I kind of think that the whole notion of work from home is a bit like the fake Marie Antoinette quote, "Let them eat cake." Mm-hmm. It's like really, you're going to work from home and you're going to make everyone else who made your car come work in the factory. You're going to make the people who make your food that gets delivered that they can't work from home. The people that come fix your house, they can't work from home, but you can? Does that seem morally right? The laptop class is living in La La Land. It's messed up to assume that yes, they have to go to work, but you don't.
The laptop class is living in La La Land.
But he lives in La La Land.
He works 7 days a week.
Still, that's a bit rich. He also couch surfs because he's too cheap to pay for a hotel.
We're not discussing Elon Musk, just his ideas on working from home versus forcing him to go back to the office.
He irks me.
Paula Allen is a global leader and senior vice president of research at TELUS Health on the line right now to talk about the fact that this idea of people going back to work, not as easy as perhaps we thought it might be. Paula, thanks for being here.
A pleasure.
Let's start with that quote from Elon Musk. I mean, there's someone who has very definite ideas of the fact that people need to go back to work. What did you think?
Well, he certainly does have definite ideas about that and many other things. And there are many people who share his beliefs and many people who have the exact opposite position. So I do think this is a little bit of a complex issue because it really depends a lot on a number of factors, how productive people are. So the type of work that's done, the type of culture in an organization, how work from home is or is not supported, individual factors. But I do think that a lot of what we're seeing right now in terms of the angst around productivity is not related to where people are working, but basically what's going on with them emotionally at this point.
I'm thinking that the longer you've stayed at home, too, the harder that adjustment is going to be. So Aaron was at home for much longer than I was. We both were mandated back around the same time. And it's a huge adjustment. And there is a lot of angst and anxiety about it. So is that exacerbated by if you've been at home this entire time and we're over 3 years later, it's just a massive adjustment and it would be hard on your mental health?
Yeah, no question. I mean, what happens is that we get into a habit. If you recall, right at the beginning of the pandemic, people were quite on edge and having a little bit of time adjusting to what work is like without the kind of structure that you have in an office environment. And then we adapted. Then we got used to it. It became a pattern. It became a habit. And human beings do not like it when habits are changed, especially when they're forced from an external factor. We don't like change, generally speaking. It causes a lot of angst and anxiety. And certainly we do not like change that we do not control.
Okay, so we know that part about not liking change. I love that you said that we cannot control because we kind of feel like we lose any sort of touch that way, any responsibility for our own decisions. What's the what's the tip rather for people who find themselves in this situation? So not everybody's going to take another job or quit their job because they don't want to be forced to go back to work. Some will go back. What's the best way to cope?
Well, I think we all are really valuing flexibility more than ever. And when we in our mental health index at TELUS Health looked at what people are actually wanting, it is that flexibility. So in some environments, it's not an option to work from home for one reason or another, the nature of the job or the request of the employer. But regardless, being able to step away from your work duties to attend to other issues and have someone cover for you, being able to make up time otherwise, being able to sort of integrate life into your day when it is necessary, that seems to be a big issue. And that also includes not necessarily where you work, but the hours you work. Mm-hmm. So starting a little bit later, leaving a little bit earlier, making up some time from home, whatever flexibility there is something that employees are valuing.
And they want support, right? This surprised me in the mental health index that you guys did last summer. 10% said people said they would forego a 10% pay raise to have more support at work. What kind of support are we talking about, Paula, that people are seeking and desiring?
Well, there's two types of support that are really very meaningful. And again, we saw this in our mental health index. One is really tangible support. So things like employee assistance programs, health services, things that actually help people when they have an issue, things that help them deal with things before they become more complex. So individual support services are very, very highly valued. The other part is basically the support that you get from your environment. So the feeling of belonging, the feeling of inclusiveness, support for work tasks, as well as managers who know how to deal with difficult situations and know how to deal with employees who might be struggling emotionally. So this is something that employers really should take to heart because the benefits and services that they offer are meaningful. I know because our organization deals with individuals every single day who are at risk of dying by suicide as just one example of the support those offerings provide, but also training managers to be the best they can be in those difficult situations without having them feel that they have to be counselors.
Wow, that's pretty heady stuff. Paula, I want to thank you. I wish we had more time. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon.
All right. Well, thank you for raising this topic. I think it's important.
All right. Yeah, it absolutely is.
Informative.
Interactive.
And always interesting.
This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Peanut allergies are no joke, but a new skin patch is proving very effective in helping children develop a tolerance to peanuts. This could be a life changer. We spoke to the study's lead author to find out how it works. So I have friends whose children have nut allergies, and it is absolutely nerve-wracking for them. I mean, when you think about it, it's stressful for adults who are allergic to nuts, right? Like our own Brian is allergic to nuts, and he has to always ask and double check. So for parents of toddlers who are constantly putting things in their mouths, it can be very scary. So this is potentially very exciting news. A new clinical trial involving a peanut patch is showing promising results for children who have severe peanut allergies. Dr. Matthew GREENHAWT is the lead author of this study, director of the Food Challenge and Research Unit at the Children's Hospital in Colorado. Thank you so much for your time today, Dr. GREENHAWT.
Hi, yeah, thank you for having me on.
So I'd love to hear how this works. So it's an experimental peanut patch. Do the kids actually wear it?
Yes, this is about a 2 to 3 centimeter in diameter patch that's got this little condensation chamber where sprayed on peanut basically through sweat gets absorbed into the skin, which is the largest immune organ in the body. And remarkably, like any other form of immunotherapy, can promote desensitization to the target. In this case, it's peanut. And this can be done in a non-oral way.
So they wear the patch and they'll have, a mild reaction. So 67% of the kids using this patch could tolerate 1 to 4 peanuts. So were you able to, you just increase the dosage on the patch to get a sense of that?
So the patch has 1 dose. So it's 250 micrograms of peanut. That's about a little under 1,000th of a single peanut kernel. And just after daily wear, day after day after day for a year, what they showed is that the kids on the active patch were able to increase the amount of peanut that it took to trigger a reaction. And like you said, it went up 1 to 4 peanuts. It was a little bit different for everybody. There were some kids who went higher than that, but, they were looking at, based on where you started, how much that jump was. And 64% of these kids were able to get up to a full gram of peanut, which, if you take a handful of peanut M&Ms, about 4 to 5 of those is what that quantity represents.
And
so that's quite meaningful to a parent.
I'll say. So they had like little to no reaction to that much.
Overall, the kids on the active patch tended to have far more milder reactions after the year of wearing it. What was severe to begin with became mild, or in some cases, no reaction, or the number of severe reactions decreased. So it not only increased the quantity that it took to provoke a reaction, but it was decreasing the severity of that. So those are two really good qualities for a parent, I think.
I'll say. And of course, I'm going to have so many questions for you, but how did age come into factor here? I think it was tested on toddlers, but could this ostensibly be introduced even at an earlier age?
Well, so this was targeting children aged 1 to 3, and what's special about this is that this is one of the few interventions that specifically looked for those very young kids, really right at the age when they're being diagnosed or shortly thereafter, and it did it in a non-oral route. Now, this has been tested in kids up to age 11, but this infant and toddler group is so special. I mean, they're the ones, fresh diagnoses. If you can intervene at that age, you can narrow the time that they ever live with peanut allergy where they're not on some potential active treatment. So that opportunity is really golden for us. Think about all the work that's been done both in Canada and in the U.S. with early peanut introduction. While, some of those kids inevitably are going to still have peanut allergy. Now, potentially you have something that could target them really shortly after that happens.
Yeah, this is going to change life for so many kids and so many parents. Doctor, let me just understand. You increase the exposure, that increases their tolerance, their reaction is less severe. Could this eventually lead to some kids just never actually developing full-on peanut allergies, or it eliminating those allergies?
It would be a treatment. So this is targeted for children who are already diagnosed. So yeah, it stretches out the amount that it would take to trigger a reaction. It can lower the severity of that reaction should it happen. And there's ongoing studies now of prolonged use and waiting to see what happens after more than just a year. After 2 years, 3 years, or even longer. So that's still to be learned. In older children, they saw a prolonged effect. The longer they wore it, the higher that level that buffer stretched to before a reaction was triggered. Ideally with longer study, we maybe can see some kids who outgrow it. At this age, by age 6, probably about 30% of kids will naturally outgrow it anyway. So, we're going to learn a lot about this. But ideally, this product needs to be approved first. Unfortunately, it's still investigational. But again, the future is really, really bright for this technology.
Yeah, I'm imagining, once this gets FDA approved, where you can go from there is huge. Is it potentially something that could be used on adults one day, or is that simply not possible because the immune system is already fully developed by that point?
So they're testing in different ages.
Okay.
The next age group that they're testing is 4 to 7. It's been tested up to 11, and in some teenagers, they're working on sort of finding, what's the best population for this type of technology. But yes, the company, as an investigator, we've known of plans that they have wanted to look at older age groups as well. Exciting
stuff. Obviously, everything's going to change once it gets FDA approved too. We really appreciate your time today, Doctor. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for your interest.
That is Dr. Matthew GREENHAWT. He is the study's lead author, director of the Food Challenge and Research Unit at the Children's Hospital in Colorado.
Can you imagine
How
that
cool
for
is
anything
that?
beyond, we're talking peanuts, but if you had some kind of food allergy, that a patch would just take care of that? No medication, no nothing?
Bit by bit, and your
great.
body works up the immunity. That is astonishing.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Informative,
interactive,
and always interesting.
This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Just when you think we're close to putting COVID behind us, the latest strain has symptoms that are very much like allergies. And what about booster shots? Should we still be getting them? What do you need to know, and how can you tell if it's just allergies or COVID? We spoke to a cardiologist and epidemiologist, Dr. CHRIS Labos. So is it just allergies or is it COVID? It could be hard to tell. A new strain of coronavirus has symptoms that can look and feel like allergies. We're going to find out more, and I will tell you I am living this personally, and the test results have been wonky. Dr. Christopher Labos is a cardiologist with a degree in epidemiology. You can catch him every Sunday morning at 8:10 on Weekends with Ken here on CJAD 800. Thank you so much for your time again today, Dr. Labos.
Oh, happy to be here.
Natasha, before you even begin, I want you to ask the part that you asked me and I didn't know, which is if you get like even a faint line that you're positive for COVID, does that count? Does that mean you only have a mild case, or what does it mean? So can we ask that?
Oh, sure. I mean,
Yeah.
I was going to
So I think,
go ahead.
Yeah, so here's the thing. A positive test is a positive test. While there are false negatives with the rapid tests, and we've seen that where people test negative, but then they ultimately eventually test positive for COVID, false positives are pretty rare, all things considered. And you look at the clinical context. If you have symptoms that sound like they probably are COVID, especially if there's somebody in your house who has COVID or you're exposed to somebody who has COVID, even a faintly positive line is a positive test. You should assume you have COVID. Okay. There is a sort of association that if you have a very, very faint line that doesn't, turn positive right away, it's probably a more mild case because you have less antigen in your sample. But that could also just be because you didn't get a good enough sample the first time around. So you have to be a little bit careful over interpreting that. But I mean, we have seen quite a number of cases where people, when they're very sick, the line is very, very positive at the beginning, and then as they get into day 10, 11, 12, the line starts to fade and before it disappears completely. So there is some correlation with the strength of the positivity of the test, but a lot of that could also be your sample collection.
Okay, so now I'm going to bore you with the details. I was going to say, let's get an overview first before we delve into my own weird story. But
I want to know because I was confused when you asked me.
Well, I still am. So I have been suffering from brutal allergies for about 2 weeks, so much so that last Thursday, Dr. Labos, I took a test and it came back negative. I'm like, good, we're good to go to Mother's Day, visit my mom. We come back, I'm still suffering. And then my guy, Dave, starts to have the similar kind of issues that I'm having. He takes a test on Tuesday morning and it comes back positive. So just a few days later, and I mean positive, like 2 screaming red lines. I'm already out of the house. By the time I get home, I test and it comes back with the faintest line. So his has stayed strong for 3 days now. Mine was super faint. It got more faint. And now I'm testing negative without ever having had the 2 strong lines. What do you make of this?
Well, it's probably a positive test, especially when you were in close contact with somebody who was positive. So you have to look at the clinical context. So it could just be that you were testing negative at the beginning, and then the positive test results, you caught it at the tail end of the infection, and you passed it on today. That's probably the most logical or most probable scenario. But yeah, you should interpret the fact that you probably did have COVID. If you've recovered and you're testing negative now, you recovered clinically, then that probably means you were at the tail end of it and you caught it sort of right at the end.
How bizarre, though, hey, that I tested negative on the Thursday and then the Tuesday I have a faint line. Anyway, all of this to say, we were questioning whether the tests are picking up the new strains. Like maybe Dave's got a different strain and I'm having this strain that looks like allergies.
So that question has come up multiple times. The rapid tests were never validated against the different strains. You were seeing more false negatives when the Omicron variant started, with all the Omicron subvariants. But it's hard to say how much of that is a direct property of the viral strain versus collection technique, because there was some evidence that the Omicron strains were sitting further back in the throat rather than the nasal cavity with some of the earlier variants. So if you're just swabbing the nose, you may not pick up the sample, because the way the test works fundamentally, when you put the swab in your nose, you're sort of collecting fluid, which you then put onto the little test applicator kit. It requires a certain amount of viral protein there to react with the drops that you put on to turn color. If there's not enough antigen in that sample, if you didn't pick up enough of it, you will get a false negative test. So that's what probably explains a lot of the false negatives. It's, I think, unclear if there's a real definitive difference between the strains and the rapid test's ability to pick them up.
So I guess what we know here is that COVID is clearly still around and it's still mutating. So what do we need to know about this particular new strain that looks and feels like allergies?
Yeah, so the big thing thing that came out with this latest variant. It was causing a lot more what we commonly refer to as pink eye, so or redness in the eyes. You see that with allergies. You sometimes see it with other viral infections, and so it's not entirely surprising that this virus would also cause a redness, inflammation in the eyes, because other viruses do that too. I think the point is that it's very difficult to know what you actually have. Is it allergies? Is it COVID? Is it something else? Because there's other viruses still circulating too. I mean, that's why testing is so important, and it's why I'm a little bit sad that the pharmacies aren't offering the free COVID tests anymore, because, when it's not free, people aren't going to go and pick them up, and so it's going to become even harder for people to know what they have. To know is like whether they should treat themselves with anti-allergy medication or whether they need to, stay home and not pass COVID on to other people. So that's the real purpose of having diagnostic testing, is to know exactly what you have so that you can treat it appropriately.
So my question would then be, let's say you can't tell. I mean, ultimately what you want to do is stay home if you have COVID, but if you have allergies and you're thinking, I'm going to go to work, I'll suffer through this, as you had to do last week, and without even knowing. So the advice still, Chris, is get yourself tested as much possibly as you can just to know it's not COVID?
Yeah, essentially that. Because here's the thing. If it's allergies, there's no reason you have to suffer through it with allergies. There's actually very effective treatments for allergies. So there's no reason you should suffer with allergies in the same way that there's no reason that you should suffer with high blood pressure or with diabetes. I mean, it is a medical problem that is easily treatable. So part of the point of diagnosis in all medical fields is to rule out certain things that you know what's left and you can treat that. So, I mean, that's the point. If you are suffering from allergies, get treated for your allergies. If you're having COVID, stay home, don't infect other people, take a sick day, work from home. I mean, the technology for that now exists. So that's why it's so important. Even if you're not eligible for the treatment for COVID, even if you're not eligible for Paxlovid because you're not in one of the high-risk groups, it's still important to know that's what you have, because how you behave as a result of that test result is going to differ.
Okay. And then I'm curious, so we had COVID end of September. So we're at the 7-month point, I guess, almost, 7-month point. So we didn't get another booster when we normally would have. What are the current recommendations for boosters when it comes to COVID? Because I really like the tests. I feel like everything's just gone out the window, doctor.
Yeah, I mean, so if you've gotten COVID now, you are going to get an immune response because of it. And that immune response is probably going to last you somewhere between 4 or 6 months at least, and then start to wane thereafter. So there's no... If your last COVID infection was within the last 6 months, there's no reason to get a booster now. I think what's probably going to happen is come the fall, there's going to be an update to the COVID vaccine, so it's going to change to reflect what the circulating strains are. That is the discussion that's happening in the U.S., and the likelihood is that if that happens in the U.S., it will likely happen here as well. So come the fall, there's likely going to be an updated COVID booster in the same way that there's going to be an updated flu vaccine to reflect the circulating flu strain. So you're likely going to see a consolidated rollout in terms of government's vaccination policy to vaccinate people against influenza and COVID come the fall, when we expect there's probably going to be a surge of cases and possibly an RSV vaccine in there as well if it gets approved by then, which it likely will.
Is that in one combined vaccine if it's a booster, or do you still take two different shots for two different things?
It's probably going to be two different shots from two different things because they're made by different companies, and there is no practical way to combine them into one injection, but they may offer them to you at the same time, which, essentially comes to the same thing.
Okay, so just before we let you go, I just want to kind of get a sense here. So if someone is suffering from allergies, A, I love what you're saying, don't suffer, get medication for it, but B, kind of work with the assumption that it could very well be COVID given this new strain?
Yeah, it certainly could be, and that's why testing is important. Again, you have to look at the clinical context. If somebody in your household has COVID and you're like, it's probably you probably have COVID too. You may not, but again, you have to look at the whole clinical context. So even if the test result is uncertain, somebody around you has COVID, it's probably a safe bet that what's causing your symptoms now is COVID too.
Okay. Dr. Chris Labos, informative as always. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. You take care.
You
too.
too.
There you go. So you feel better now knowing this, or?
Yeah, I do. I'm still confused on how I could test negative on a Thursday and how it only was, like he said, it must have been on the tail end. So maybe, but I felt okay.
And you feel fine now? And the last time you tested, you tested negative? I
tested today and I tested negative. Yesterday morning, I tested positive, but with the faint line. By the end of the day, I tested negative.
Yeah.
I just don't trust
By
it
the
now.
way,
You know what I mean? I'm like...
Yeah, to what he mentioned, those free tests are no longer free, right? We had the announcement this week by the government that unless you qualify as one of the groups, specifically, or you're immunocompromised or for very young children, you will have to pay for the tests going forward. So just keep that in mind.
Someone was asking how much they are. I don't know. I would like to know that. So
someone said they were like $9 or $8.98. But I could be wrong. That was a text that came in the other day. If you've had to buy a COVID test kit and would not mind letting us know, text us at 514-800. Tell us how much they are. We can pass that along as well.
And again, they continue to be free for those, as you mentioned, for those with complications, low incomes as well, that they are free for.
Someone also gave us a nudge, wink, wink. If you ask and you say you didn't know that you had to pay, they might give you one. But I don't want to say that's kind of how it would work, but someone suggested that's the case or that's what happened to them. That wraps up another edition of The Week That Was here in the iHeartRadio Network. I'm Aaron Rand along with Natasha Hall, and we will see you next week.
Have a fantastic week.
This has been the Montreal Now podcast with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Listen live on your radio weekday afternoons from 2 to 6
on CJAD 800
or through the iHeartRadio app.